Hi, this is Jeremy Clark, Executive Director of Grace Ministries International. And today we have with us Ted Rabenold, who's serving in Tanzania, and Cory Hodgson, who's serving in Paraguay. Ted, you are not at home right now, are you? Where are you at?
No, I'm in the northeastern part of Tanzania, a place called Moshi. So we're up closer to Arusha at this point. Yeah.
How far away is that from, well, let me ask you this. Where is home typically for you, Ted?
Home is Rootball Valley in southwest Tanzania. So we're really on the other side of the country right now. We work in Tanzania. If you look at Lake Tanganyika, which is in the far west, we're toward the southern point of Lake Tanganyika in the Rootball Valley to the west of Lake Rukwa is where our base is.
Okay. And then, Cory, you're at home right now in Paraguay. And what city do you guys live in?
We live in a city called Ciudad del Este, which is on the border of Paraguay and Brazil, and I believe is the second largest city in the country.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. You can see you can see Brazil, you can see the river there, and it's a lot of fun to visit Ciudad del Este. I just was there, I think it was last year, and I also visited Ted. I think it was last December, as a matter of fact. And Ted, if I were to stand on the roof of your house in the Rukwa, I might be able to see the very edge of the earth. You live in a very remote place, and if you wouldn't mind, Ted, just explain a little bit about the Rootball Valley. It's people, the economics, the religion there. I think people would be very interested to hear more about the Rukwa.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to do that. The Rootball Valley is it's a valley that has a lake in the center of it, and the lake is Lake Rukwa. It's about 130 miles long by 35 miles wide, the valley itself. And then the lake is in the shape of an hourglass in that valley. And around that lake are 7 different people groups. We work with 4 of them. We work with the Fipa, the Nika, the Wana, and the Sukuma, the Wasukuma, are the 4 people groups that we work with. We're the area that we live in is very agricultural, very much, as you mentioned, remote or isolated. Most of the people rely upon what they farm to make a living. There's a cash crop there, which is rice. It's paddy rice. So right now, the people are almost at the point where they're going to start harvesting the rice from this past rainy season, which has been a big rainy season. A lot of rain. The people are very happy because the rice is produced quite well. But the corn has suffered because it gets too much water on rainy years. And so the food that people eat is corn, and the rice that people grow is what they sell to make money. And so to make a living, they hope to get a lot of rice, and they also hope to get some corn. So this year they might have to use some of the money they make from the sale of rice to buy some of their corn. And so those are the 2 big crops that people farm. The valley is very fertile. It'll grow so many different crops, so many different types of fruit, so many different types of vegetables. But many of these things are just really being introduced at this time, starting to come into the valley, and we're hoping to use that as a tool to impact local people. We're involved in running a venue for training small-scale farmers. We work with beekeepers, fish farmers. We work with people that are interested in growing fruit trees, especially grafted avocados and citrus. And so those are some of the projects we're involved in, trying to impact the farmers in this valley.
Now, Ted, one of the things that when you think about sub-Saharan Africa, you think about an area that's been it's been influenced by Christian missionaries, and you think about all these maybe Christian cultures and countries and such in sub-Saharan Africa. But as you and I have talked over the years, the Rukwa Valley, maybe particularly, it has a lot of elements of some more native religions and ideas and superstitions. Can you address maybe the religious climate of the Rukwa Valley, and what is it like there?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Yeah, the people there are what you would classify animistic, would be classified as animistic. And that is basically their general outlook on life, and how they seek to control their lives is through animism. Almost every human being on earth seeks a measure of control. How do they get by in life? How do they navigate life? And so people in the Rukwa Valley, they seek to control life through animism. And animism basically is the understanding that they live in a physical world, but that they believe that physical world can be impacted if you can influence the spiritual world and then have that come back down again. It in turn will change the circumstances in the world that they live in. And so through incantations, through spells, through fetishes, they seek these things from local shaman, local power brokers, as you would say, people that are able to coerce or manipulate God. They believe that these men have that power to do that, so that then they are benefited in the physical world that they live in. And so, if they want a certain position of power in the village, if they're looking to get maybe a good harvest from their crops. If they're looking to get some material thing in their life, they will go and seek something. They'll seek some type of power, and that power then being to influence the spiritual realm and come back and then change the physical realm in their favor. And so this is how animistic people live. We call it witchcraft, and basically it is. Anytime I think we try to impact metaphysically the world that we're in, there is a measure of witchcraft involved in that. And so that's how the people seek to control their lives. I suppose in the West, materialistic, we use the dollar to
right.
change our lives. We believe we have a measure of control if we have a certain amount of money. And so they really aren't any different than we are. They're just using it different. In the East, they use animism, and in the West, we use materialism. Really, in the end, it's only Jesus Christ that can impact the human heart and really give us lasting benefit and give us joy, true joy and purpose. So,
thanks, Ted. Cory, I got to say from the onset here that you have done something that very few missionaries have done. Not only have you changed fields, because you and Ted used to serve together in Tanzania, but you changed fields. That means you changed countries. You've also changed continents, and you've also changed languages. And how has that transition gone for you and your family? Well, I got to say, I'm really impressed by how you guys have adapted and been able to change with the circumstances. But share a little bit about that for us.
It's been an interesting process for us as well. I think we've enjoyed it for the most part. Up until the quarantine, the kids have been in school, which they've enjoyed, and it's a good Christian school that's been very patient with them learning Spanish. Right now, most of their classes are all in Spanish. They do have some English curriculum, but Naomi's taking physics, mathematical logic, chemistry, literary analysis, and several other classes, all in Spanish. Also learning.
I would fail those in English.
Yeah, and me too. She's also learning Portuguese and the one of the national languages of Paraguay called Guarani, also in Spanish. So she's learning a third language through her second language, which she already knew some Swahili. So I don't know if Spanish is technically her second language, but certainly she's the most fluent in that. And all the kids are doing well and making progress with that. We're also making progress with the language. We continue to do language classes 3 times a week, and as well as just normal life, talking to people, doing ministry. So that's been a good thing. I think our years in Tanzania was a good preparation for coming here. With the traffic and some of the disorder that we experienced, didn't feel so disorderly.
Sure.
Because it was just normal for us.
Right.
So some of the things that other newer missionaries face and struggle with, I believe, wasn't quite as difficult for us. And so there have certainly been challenges, and some of those continue. But overall, I believe it's been a good transition, and God's been very kind and showing His grace to us through that process.
Yeah, I know you're not going to say this about yourself, Cory, but you and Kim have done a great job with Spanish and learning Spanish. I'm very impressed by it. And Cory's also the human GPS. And so he knows his way around just about any place after spending, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes there. And he does a great job just navigating.
Yeah, it's nice. Most of the roads here are paved, not all of them. And once you're around a little bit, it's not too bad getting around. So right now the challenge is avoiding police checkpoints and people that are trying to hassle us when we're out and about.
Cory, I want to ask you real quick here. I asked Ted a little bit about the culture there in the Rootball Valley specifically. Ciudad del Este is one of the most interesting places I've ever visited before. And, tell us about the demographics a little bit, or the makeup of the city and what causes it to be that way. I mean, it's quite the place and very diverse.
Sure. The city itself is only just over 60 years old. I believe it was, for a lot of its history, it was basically a smuggling point between Brazil and Paraguay. And so things coming in from other countries would go through Paraguay into Brazil or vice versa. And so that's kind of what it's famous for, is smuggling cigarettes, drinking alcohol, marijuana, electronic goods. But now it's more of a commercial hub. So a lot of Brazilians come because it's tax-free here in Paraguay. So a lot of Brazilians even take shopping tours here to Ciudad del Este. It's really quite a mix ethnically. There's more Brazilians that live here than Paraguayans. You have a lot of Lebanese people that live here, and then there's a Bengali population as well. So you have the Bengali Muslims and also the Lebanese Muslims, and so there's quite a few mosques in town, which is good news for us because it means shawarma and a lot of good Arab food. We really enjoy that, and we had a lot of experience with Arab people in Tanzania as well, and so that's another thing that we were in some ways prepared for. So that's been interesting. Obviously, most non-Arabs are Catholic by upbringing here, so a majority of the population is Catholic, and it's very, in some ways, I would say almost animistic in some of its beliefs and some of its practices. You don't get a lot of evangelical Catholics, whereas in the States that might be a little more common. It's much more worshiping the saints, worshiping Mary, the Mariolatry. Every city has its own shrine, basically, to a certain version of some version of Mary or another saint. So really, you have a lot of idolatry here. A lot of the people in our churches are basically converted Catholics that have left the Catholic Church and have joined the evangelical Protestant church. And so we still deal with a lot of Catholic issues, and a lot of our teaching is framed from that so that people can understand it better and in turn share it with others in a little better way.
So Ted, you were mentioning in the Rootball Valley just the worldview of animism, and also there's an agricultural society. So then how do you, as a Bible-believing missionary, reach people in the Rootball Valley, and what are some of your current initiatives to be able to engage the culture, but also then to be able to share with them the truth of Jesus Christ?
Yeah, we have working where we're working, the government is very involved in work we're involved in as well, or they're interested in work we're involved in. And I think when you're working especially in a remote area, and you have the ability to impact people specifically in the area of farming, a place like Rootball Valley, being 95% of the people being involved in agriculture, it's very positive in terms of government relationships that we're involved training farmers. And so not only do we have the inclination to want to do that, but it's also seen as something that's important by the local authorities. So we're grateful to have the encouragement of district commissioner and other people who are behind us in the training that we're doing. But for us, when we think about how we can impact local people, we want to be able to I mean, if you tell people all you want about Christianity and about having a church and how important the church is, but most unregenerate people are people that don't have Jesus Christ as their Savior, they're not interested in a church. They want to know, how can I either get better education for my children? How can I get medical help? How can I get clean water? And how can I become a better farmer and make a better living? And so we're trying to look at a tangible physical way to help people, impacting them where they're at, where they're coming from. And so we run a venue that trains small-scale farmers in various different pastimes. We do animal husbandry training, beekeeper training, as well as we do a lot of horticulture training. We just had training on the plateau. This was last month with a high school there. We do a lot of training for local high schools. So we have up to 200, 250 kids that come from sometimes Form 3 and Form 4. And for new high schools, Form 1 and Form 2, they come and they ask us if we can train their kids in farming. They realize most of the kids that actually finish high school are still going to be involved in farming. And so we're able to impact teachers. We're able to impact the kids by getting opportunity to speak to them on this. And then by impacting people physically, we hope that that's able to provide goodwill, as well as to show local people we're concerned about the things they're concerned about. But then secondly, we believe in developing a team of disciples, okay? And so we do discipleship training. We tried to just imitate what Jesus Christ did. He had 12 disciples. I have 9 guys that I work with, and we have Monday morning every morning we're at 7:30, we're at prayer under the mango tree. After prayer, we go up and we have kind of a report time. Some of the guys that work for me are involved in some of the physical projects that we're doing, running of tree nurseries, as well as involved in some of the agricultural work. And so we have a report time on how the work went last week, and then what our goals are for the next week. Then we have Bible training right after that, where we get into the Bible. We use a training right now called reconciledworld.org. And it basically is, I think it's very, very fundamental and very instructional. It starts with Genesis, and it goes through the book of Genesis. And the first question they ask is, why did Jesus Christ come and die for us? Why did Jesus Christ come and die? And my guys, a couple of my guys that have been with me for a long time says, isn't that supposed to be the last question? How can that be the first question?
Sure.
Isn't that supposed to be the last question? And I said, and I said, no, answer the question. And so the guys think about it. They said, well, he died for us so that we would be able to go to heaven and live eternally with him, you know? And the answer is, that's part of the answer. Okay, the answer is, that's part of the answer. But then what do we do? That's after we die. What do we do while we're still in this body? What do we do while we're still in this body? Well, the answer is to be, we go back almost like Adam was before the fall. Jesus Christ gives us the ability to be new again, be reconciled with God, be reconciled with human beings, and to be reconciled with his creation, or the resources that we have that God made around us. Just like Adam was, he had a relationship that's different than we have today with God. He had a relationship that's different than we have today with people, and he had a relationship that's different with the resources or the creation that God made. And so when we come to Christ and we become born again and we become new creatures, we are able to enjoy those relationships. Now, that's what our job is in the body. How do we get back to engaging in those three fronts? Being reconciled with God. How do we rejoice in that? How do we rejoice in being reconciled with people again? And how do we rejoice in receiving those glorious, wonderful things that he made at the creation of the world, and using them to instill trust and belief in other people for Christ's kingdom? Those are really the three big questions that we seek to struggle with. We struggle with as disciples. How do we do those things and impact the people around us, and then share Christ with them? So,
thanks so much, Ted. And then Cory, you just explained a little bit about Ciudad del Este, the culture, the background and such. Now, what does your church's ministry, first of all, just to give a little background, there are 4 missionary families assigned to Paraguay, and it's a growing ministry there, and a ministry that wants to expand into other cities and other parts of Ciudad del Este. But explain a little bit more about the church and the ministry there in Paraguay in that context of it being such an international and diverse city.
Sure. Well, our church is called Grace Bible Church. Obviously, it's in Spanish, but it's been a really exciting ministry to be a part of. Alex Goulart, who is our teammate, they were here by themselves originally and started a Bible study. And then the Bomers family came and they started the church from that. And now we are in our 3rd location, and the church is growing quite rapidly. Once again, with a disclaimer before the quarantine.
Sure.
We'll see what happens afterwards. But it's quite an international church. We have people from all over South America with a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, a lot of Portuguese speakers, a lot of Spanish speakers. Our pastor is Argentinian, so is our worship teacher, and our worship pastor, and they're both married to Brazilian gals. And so, you have a lot of mixture. We have a lot of medical students. One thing Ciudad del Este is also becoming more famous for is having a lot of medical schools that caters to Brazilians. It's very difficult for Brazilians to go to medical school in Brazil, but they can come to Paraguay and get a medical degree and then go back to Brazil and utilize that. And so we have a lot of medical students and young people that are part of our church, and it's been really exciting to see some of them witnessing and evangelizing their friends and bringing them to church, becoming part of the Bible study programs, and it's just been exciting seeing that area grow. And so really, we try to cater to a very diverse group of people. We know that everything's in Spanish, but there's always a group of Portuguese speakers to talk to, even English speakers, of course, with us being there and Bomers being there. And so it's really a fun place to be. It's the body of Christ is very diverse, and our congregation is very diverse to match that. And so it's really a nice thing to be a part of ministry-wise, social-wise, and we enjoy each other's company very much.
Cory, you mentioned this this quarantine that you're under. When did that begin in Paraguay? What are the restrictions of the quarantine, and what are the prospects for it being lifted anytime soon?
Well, we've now been 4 weeks under a full quarantine, which means we're not supposed to leave our house unless we are going grocery shopping or going to a pharmacy. And so that also means we can't go outside and take walks, even though we're just a few minutes from the big lake, which is kind of in the middle of town, which is about a 3.5 mile circuit, which Kim and I really enjoyed walking around.
Right.
We can't go do that anymore because all of that is restricted now. So we've been 4 weeks basically in the house, which has taught us that we really need to learn some of the best takeout places in town that are kind of secretly opening up. I don't think they're supposed to be open, so there's a few places we can get pizza and burgers, but otherwise it's all home cooking. And in the last week, they made it now so we can only leave the house 3 days a week, because they said the people with even numbers at the end of their license plate can only go out Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then odd numbers the other 4 days. And so I don't really know what that's going to accomplish, because there's really not many people out and about anyways. And when I was out on Tuesday, I saw a lot of odd numbered license and plates out. So I don't think it's really changing anything, but they're definitely trying to restrict things more and more. They said that some of the restrictions may ease this coming Sunday, but they've also said that for the last several weeks, and then they just extend the quarantine. And so we won't be surprised if it gets extended, but we will rejoice if it gets lifted for at least a portion of that. So it's given us a lot of time to be inside with our family, doing school, playing board games, learning patience and grace with one another to an extreme degree. And we're thankful, though. We have a good house. We have plenty of food. We have more than a lot of people in the country can be thankful for. So
Now, Ted, Tanzania is on the front end of this new coronavirus crisis, I guess, and so what are things like in Tanzania with respect to the coronavirus, and what are you seeing?
Well, we fully expected to have a lockdown like Cory's having. That hasn't happened yet, but it's very possible that will happen, as well as regions will be shut down, travel between regions, just to keep it from spreading. But it's unlikely that it would be very difficult to enforce some of those things. The first thing most Tanzanian people do if they're ill, especially if they're seriously ill, they want to go back to where they're from, because they don't want to. Literally, they don't want to die somewhere else and then have to be transported back. So they think to themselves, we have to get home. And so I think that could be a detriment in terms of seeing the disease spread faster. We just had our first confirmed case in the area that we're in right here. And this is the very beginning, but there's only one testing center right now in the capital city. And so any samples taken anywhere really have to go there before they can be verified. And so there's a possibility it could be more that we have right now. It's hard to say, because we don't know everything that's going on, what's actually happening. I know that the spacing we're supposed to leave in terms of, the tours between people, it's highly unlikely that it will happen here. It's a very gregarious society that we live in. People are extremely close. They're close talkers. They're close walkers. They're close commuters. When you sit in church, someone's always sitting on you, not just next to you. And so it's a community that is very, 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 very closely knit in terms of personal space. You're tied together. There isn't a lot of what we would say, privacy that we would think of in the West. And so that could be an issue, as well as there's multiple generations living in homes here. So you have what maybe they had similarly in Italy and other places in Europe, where you have the grandmother, the mother and father, and the children, and even in some cases, you have grandchildren, everybody in the same home. And so it will be very interesting. We have a younger populace in the country. It's a younger populace, but they also have a very high HIV rate as well as birth rate in the country as well. And it's really only God, we're praying that God will have mercy and that will pass. The people are very, they have very strong constitutions. They've had a lot of different diseases that they've had to battle over the years, like malaria, typhoid, cholera. Many of these diseases have come through these areas. And so God will show us exactly what to expect, I think, in the next 3 weeks.
Sure. And now, Cory, with this lockdown that you're under, you described your church, you described it being a growing church with a caveat that this coronavirus crisis happened and so forth. What kinds of ministries are you still able to do now, or how are you able to engage the church, or how are you and the Bomers able to kind of move things forward, or at least maintain things, and along with the leadership team there?
Well, like many churches in the States, we've transitioned to an online service on Sundays. And so the worship leader, he'll do his songs, and then the pastor will do his sermon. Even just today, we are working on buying some better microphones, excuse me, and a better phone stand for the pastor so that he can communicate more effectively through that online medium. In terms of what we are doing, we just started 2 different Bible studies, one Bible study using the Prison Mission Association Bible lessons translated into Spanish, and then another based on a book called Bible Truth by Charles Baker. And so we're not continuing the Bible Truth one right now because it's difficult to do a book study through the internet or through Zoom. But what we're doing right now is the Bible lessons from PMA. We are emailing to our students. They're filling them out, directing them, commenting on them, and returning them. So we're able to at least keep something going, especially those who are more diligent in their studies are able to continue, and we are able to stay in communication with them, try to encourage them, let them know that we are praying for them and thinking about them and trying to maintain that fellowship and that connection in some way during the quarantine. So.
Now, Ted, you just sent me a picture of a fish pond. Sorry, Cory.
Venezuelan. What's that?
Sorry, Cory, you just cut out there for a second. I was just asking Ted a question. Ted, you just sent me a picture of a fish pond you just completed there in the Rootball Valley, and what other projects do you have going on right now that you hope aren't interrupted by whatever government decision is made regarding this coronavirus?
Yeah, right now we're involved in located. It's basically 1 classroom for a primary school there. There'll probably be 10 classrooms when it's finished. So just showing local people that we care about them. We care about the kids. I know there's a lot of kids in some of the classrooms that are in the single primary school in our area. So there can be up to sometimes 100 plus. I heard of one classroom having 200 kids in it, and so we're hoping that we're going to impact the area at least in terms of providing a good classroom and kind of joining hands with the project that they're already undertaking in the village of Nsanga. So that's one of the projects. We've already dug the foundation, got the stones in, begun the work on the foundation. So we'd like to keep going on that. Then we also finished the fish pond. We just got that wrapped up. The guys let the water out of yesterday, and they're patching one little area they need to patch up, and we're going to refill it. We have to fertilize the water. That means build up the chlorophyll count. The chlorophyll count needs to be built up before we put the fish in. They thrive on the phytoplankton and the zooplankton that is in the water when there's chlorophyll in it. So we're working on finishing those 2 projects. We do have a water project to the north in the village of Lianza, but I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be hard depending on what kind of quarantine imposed and what kind of things come down the line will dictate what we're able to get done this year. We also had to cancel 2 of our trainings that we had set up for April and May, respectively. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to get all those things going again. Right now, the rule is no more than 10 people in a meeting. So any kind of outdoor meeting, they have to have 10 or less. And so it really limits what we can do. We had a bunch of handicap bicycles that we've gotten, 15 of them we started to distribute. We've distributed 9 of them at this point. We still have 6 left. We hope to have a village meeting once the restrictions are lifted to have 6 different recipients come and receive those. So you'll see some pictures soon. I think I sent some out already and updates that'll update you on some of the people that have received the bikes already. We're very grateful for supporters. They're very patient, as well as they've been very generous in helping the work move forward. And so we can't thank them enough.
Thanks, Ted. Hey, let's end with this, guys. How can we pray for you? Cory?
Yeah, just for our current situation, for patience, for the country here, for understanding with the government. A lot of people are quite upset with the government. A lot of people, just like in Tanzania, live basically a hand-to-mouth existence where they work each day to get enough money to buy food. And in the city, obviously, they can't farm and store up food like in some instances in the village. And so you have a lot of people that are out of work. They don't have money. They don't have any assistance from the government. And so each week that the quarantine gets extended is kind of an additional amount of helplessness and hopelessness that people are feeling. And so for our own family, we don't have a lot to complain about, or we're pretty satisfied in terms of where we're at. But just like I said earlier, for patience with one another, and that things can go back to normal. Kids can go back to seeing their friends. The ministries can start back up, but we just need to trust that our leaders here in Paraguay are making good decisions and try to stay respectful of us. So,
thanks,
Cory. Ted, how can we pray for you and Kim in the ministry?
Yeah, I would reiterate what Cory said. Most people in Tanzania are the same as what Cory mentioned. People have to, they have enough to get by for the day, and then they have to work again the next day. And so very important that we remember that. I think it's hard for us in the West. We put up a certain amount of reserves that we can rely on quite often. That's not so really in most of sub-Saharan Africa, And so we just pray for the people in regards to how they'll cope. Especially with just loss of business. Our restaurants are all closed. And most supermarkets are either struggling or we have different situation here, especially in the city when you see some of these businesses that have been thriving and really doing well. The whole tourism sector in northern Tanzania is shut down. That's 95% of the tour operators that run tourism, and that's really the main industry in Tanzania is tourism. And so seeing all those guys out of business, they are quite concerned the crime rate may rise because of that. So if you just pray for the people more than anything. You can pray for us, the missionaries in Tanzania. I know that all of us will in some way come in contact with the virus. It would be far-fetched to think that we wouldn't. Medical equipment is few and far in between here. And so we appreciate your prayers for us, for our family, as well as for our brothers and sisters that work with us, the disciples that we're discipling, the discipleship team, as well as the village leaders in our village. We appreciate your prayers for that. That God would give us grace, and God would help us to really shine during this time. It's hard. It's hard when you really can't. It's funny, it talks about giving a cold cup of water, and when you do so, you're doing unto Christ. When you have to be 6 feet away from people,
it's hard.
It's hard. How do you hand off that cold cup of water? And so for me, I really like talking to people, and even having a mask on is very restrictive in terms of being able to share meaningfully. And so just, keep praying for us in regards, how do we share our faith? How do we really show the love of Christ when we have shackles, really certain restraints put on us during this time, and how to do that?
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Cory and Ted, for just spending some time and sharing about life ministry in your fields. We appreciate both of you, and I'm so glad that people are able to learn more about your ministries and learn how to pray for you guys. Thanks so much for being a part of this interview today, and we look forward to just being able to get this out and letting people see it, and being able to share it and pray for you as well. So, guys, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you around.
Hey, thank you.
Yep.